Working? Yeah. Good evening, all. Please help yourself take a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Take something to eat. take a l'chaim. We're going to start in a few short moments. It's really a schus that all are here to reflect on this special day of Gimel Tammuz. Again, we'll start within 3-4 minutes. We'll get started.
Oh yo ya mama ya 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 yo ya da da oh ya da da ya mama mama yo ya da da yo ya da da ya ya mama ya 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 yo ya da da oh ya da 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 ya da da yo ya da da oh ya da da yo ya da da oh ya da da yo ya da da yo ya da da ya da da oh ya da da oh ya da da oh ya da da oh ya ma oh ya da da yo ya da da oh ya da da ya da da ya da 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 yo da 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 ya da 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 yo oh da 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 ya oh da 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 ya oh da 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 ya oh da da yo ya ma oh da 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 ya oh da 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 ya oh da da oh da 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 ya oh da ya oh da 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 ya.
Mike. Okay. Good evening. And I'd like to ask all to please take a seat. With the slide in my eyes, I don't see who's here and who's not, but it's noch a sach. Sari b'yoir. I figured it's best if the two Rabbi Taub and yourself sit here so you can. Thank you. Just a few opening remarks as per the schedule. I want to start by actually wishing a mazel tov to the Taub Mishpacha, Rabbi and Rebbe Taub, and to the Groisman family on the engagement of their children this week. I want to wish you that all the Rebbe's brachas that the Chosn and Kala requested that the oil should be there in full, begashmi, beruchnis, materially and spiritually, abinyan adayad, and continued chassidus and achas from the whole Mishpacha. Do want to thank those who have participated in helping with the cost of the event. Yasher koyach. Also wanted to take a moment to wish Esther Max a happy birthday, as today is her birthday, and it is also co-sponsored in honor of her Yom Haledas. Just a few ideas about Gimel Tammuz. The Rebbe wrote regarding the yahrzeit of his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, different minhagim customs to observe on this day and in preparation for the day. Firstly, trying to go to the oihel, writing a pan, a note where one mentions their name, their mother's name. Obviously, parents mention children's names. And the Rebbe says first put it into a sefer of the teachings of the Rebbe and then bring it over to the oihel. For those who are listening via live stream, and if you cannot make it in person to the oihel, please feel free to send your names to me, rabbi@chabad5towns.com, name and mother name, and I'll be happy to mention you at the oihel. You know, today I was visiting a family, a grandchild of Chabad Chassidim who escaped the war. And one thing led to the next, and we were talking about going to the oihel. And they look at me and they say, we have never been there. And I'm thinking, imagine if a person lives a 10-minute drive from Miron on Lag BaOmer. Would they not go to Miron on Lag BaOmer? We are literally a 10-minute drive. Many of us walk Shabbos afternoon, as the Rebbe does write in that letter, that the Shabbos following the Yartzeit, we continue to observe that which relates to the Yartzeit, and for that matter, with the Rebbe's impact, we continue to connect on a daily basis. If one can, one should light a Yartzeit candle. One should take a moment to support the causes that the Rebbe stood for. One of them can be, and not limited to, Chabad of the Five Towns. One of those causes. Bashgocha Pratis, we celebrate the engagement of the Groisman Taub Mishpacha becoming Mechutonim. And in the letter, Mazel Tov, that the Rebbe writes regarding observing a Yartzeit, he mentions that we should discuss, one of the things we discuss is the unconditional Avas Yisrael. He speaks about his father-in-law, and we take that same thing here. So today, we will open with the unconditional Avas Yisrael that the Rebbe had to a family living in a far island. And the story goes, my father-in-law, Zayin Gesund, had this chus that he was known as the ambassador of Chabad centers, traveling throughout the world, establishing Chabad. And he had tremendous direct guidance from the Rebbe. And many times the Rebbe sent him to places and he had no idea why, and to this day he doesn't know why. But sometimes he was told. He had a secret code with the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Chadakov, that if he called him in the middle of the night and asked him, Moshe, schon gewaschen Negelwasser? Moshe, did you wash your hands, Negelwasser? That means the Rebbe is on the line. And one day, it's in the middle of the night, he gets a call from Rabbi Chadakov with the introduction, Moshe, schon gewaschen Negelwasser. So he knows the Rebbe is on the line. And then Rabbi Chadakov tells him that he should go as soon as possible to the island of Korasa. And that's the end. That's the mission. That's the mission. Go. So it was way before the days of internet where you got a ticket online. He calls his travel agent, who Nebuch already knew with my father-in-law. If he gets a call in the middle of the night, he runs from Queens to Manhattan to his office, issues the good old standstill ticket, goes to the Korasa, gets to the island, and really doesn't know where to go from here. He goes into a taxi, and he asks the guy if he knows where the shul is, if he can take him to the shul. The guy said, sure, I'll take you there. Comes into the shul, and he sees the lights are off. The door opens. He walks, and he sees a Jew standing by an open Oren Kodesh, an open ark, and crying. He waits and waits, and then the Yid turns around and says, looks at my father-in-law, says, are you from Lubavitch? He says, yes. The Yid tells my father-in-law, I don't believe it. I'm having a real issue. The issue is that my son was expelled from the local Catholic school. It was a private school where they respected everyone's religion, but a new dean was hired, and he insisted that I'll go into a prayer service. And one Jewish boy said, I'm not going in. And he made a big fuss about it. And it even got physical, and he beat up the principal. Sounds like the days in yeshiva, huh? Anyway, and he says, now we're in the papers. The Jewish community doesn't like us because of the Rutgers we caused. We just told our children go in, and when they say whatever they say, you just say Shema Yisrael, but my son won't go in. And I don't know what to do. And as I'm laying in bed, trying to close my eyes, I get into a dream, and my grandfather tells me, Jaime, did I not tell, my grandmother tells me, Jaime, did I not tell you that whenever you're in trouble, turn to Lubavitch? He remembers as a child she passed away, but before she passed away, Jews alone on an island, she told him that. He wakes up and he says, what's Lubavitch? Who's Lubavitch? Again, it's before the internet days. You can't just do a Google search, you know. And he says, I came to shul. And here you are. Well, they did the calculation of the timing. The exact same time that he had the dream was the time that Rabbi Chadakov called my father-in-law and told him to go. to Kurasa. So now he knows what he's doing. He meets the boy. And he says, what's his name? Eli? Very nice. Starts talking with him, and the conversation goes, don't you love donuts in New York? Come, I'll take you to New York, and I'll give you some donuts. That's how it went. And he took him to New York, put him up in his house, sent him to Yeshiva to Chanech Lenar. And the subsequent to that visit, first Yom Tov was Purim. So my father-in-law invited Eli's family to come to be by the Rebbe for Purim in Crown Heights. And he was there by the Rebbe, and I was uplifted and really moved by the whole experience. The Rebbe's Farbrengen, Purim. It was an uplifting experience on every level. He got back home, and he wrote a letter to my father-in-law to please thank the Rebbe for everything in detail. And then he concludes, thank him for caring about a small Jew living alone on an island. My father-in-law was so moved by the letter, they took the letter as is and sent it into the Rebbe. Within no time, he got a response. The Rebbe circled small Jew, and the Rebbe added a quote that he should look into the second Pedic chapter of Tanya, and he'll learn that there's no such thing as a small Jew, because every neshama, every soul is a chelik elekam imal mamish, is an actual part of God on high. That is the Rebbe's Avas Yisrael. He looked at every individual, no matter who. Chelik elekam imal mamish. It so happens to be b'ashgacha protis that child is today Rabbi Taub's mechutin, Eli Groisman, and I hope I said the story right. And Miriam, yes, married to Miriam Grace Baruch Hashem. And this is the Rebbe's cook, the Rebbe's approach, and the Rebbe's brachas continue. So with this opening remark, I'd like now to pass the mic. I want to thank Rabbi Zakutinsky and Rabbi Taub for making themselves available this evening to share as it relates to a message, as it relates to Gimel Tammuz. I want to thank Nachi Gordon for emceeing Agreis Yasher Koyach. Thank you. I do want to recognize amongst everyone, first, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Rabbi Weinberger. I'm sorry that you're not allowing yourself to be up here, but I'll allow you that comfort. I know what it's like.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's a pleasure to be here once again. Last year was amazing, and Rich this year will be as well. If you think I'm looking at you, I'm not. I can't see a thing. So, it's the Arush Shechina maybe, right? I was thinking, it's the 29th yard site of such a great person. What do you say? So on Shabbos, I'm thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Hey, Yehuda. Coincidentally, I picked up a book, a Sefer, Baderach, by Rav Judah Michel, to start again for Elul. And an introduction jumped out at me, this is the perfect thing to say. So bear with me, 30 seconds, I'll just read from this. It says, the great Reb Shraga Feivel Mendelevich was sitting outdoors with a group of students, and he asked one of them to turn over a large stone embedded in the ground. As he did so, swarms of insects scurried about in every direction. Said Reb Shraga Feivel, do you see those creatures? For their entire existence under that rock, they believed the world to be dark, a dreary place. By overturning that stone, you have revealed a whole new world, filled with light and beauty. And exposing them to the sun and sky, you've introduced a new dimension of reality into their lives. That is our mission in this world, to roll the heavy stones of souls and reveal the Yiddish neshama, to allow the Ora Shechina, the light of the divine presence, to shine. When we have moved the boulders, we can lift our eyes to the heavens, behold our Creator, and know our Yiddishkeit. And I thought right away, that is the mission. That's what the Rebbe accomplished in his lifetime and what is continued to be accomplished. From Mumbai to the Congo, 5 towns to Muncie, everywhere in the world there are boulders being moved and a Neshama is being exposed to the Arush Shechina. So tonight, that is who we are remembering, that is who we are commemorating. And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Rabbi Shais Taub, and I just want to mention that maybe you look around this room, maybe there's 100 people, maybe 200 watching online, maybe a few more thousand. From this event last year, There was a clip that was posted on social media on Meaningful Minutes channel of Rabbi Taub saying a little story. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it has well over 1 million views. Well over 1 million views. Jews, non-Jews, not from, all walks of life. So the Shekhinah is here, and the words that will be said here will, Mirz Hashem, go all around the world. Without further ado, Rabbi Taub.
Shakayach Reb Nachi, and as you told, I don't know if am I allowed to share the what we discussed before the event. It's okay. Yeah, okay. Apparently, this is the official unveiling of Nachi's kapota. So
it wasn't enough for some people because I was getting a lot of comments about where's the beard. And I look on this dais over here, and I'm
okay.
I'm a little out of place, but it's coming. Mirz Hashem.
You're booked for next year.
Yeah.
Take it 1 year at a time, you know. Baruch Hashem. So, Reb Nachi, it's actually very apropos that you mentioned that clip from last year, and we're sitting right. It feels like yesterday, right? Yeah, it feels like mamish yesterday, but it was a year ago. In fact, it was over a year ago, because last year, our Gimel Tammuz event for the 5 towns was on Chof Ches Sivan, and this year it's actually on the day of Gimel Tammuz itself. So it's a year and a week, basically, ago. And it feels like yesterday. But yeah, I shared a story sitting right here at this spot. And Yisrael Grimberg from 3-2-1 Motion, he took the clip, he sent it to Nachi and his team at Meaningful Minute. And then it went viral. Yeah, over 1 million people saw it. And I'm not saying this so, to boast, I have a, viral clip. I mean, I think what Andy Warhol said, in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. So the future is now, right? That was my 15 minutes. But I'm mentioning it because what Reb Nachi said about, yeah, there's a few hundred people in the room. There's a few thousand people watching online right now. But anything that happens here and now can go to literally millions of people. Or why not billions? Why limit it? Billions of people, why not? That is actually what I wanted to talk about and reflect upon tonight on Gimel Tammuz, on the day of the Rebbe's Yortzeit. The idea that something can appear to be small, it can appear to be just happening in this space with the people that are present physically, and that in reality, from a spiritual point of view, which is not limited by time and space, the significance of the moment is infinite. And it's so hard to speak about the Rebbe. But I think if we wanted to take one path to trying to say something, to put into words some idea, I think that might be a good way to try to do it, and to basically say, the Rebbe's view of reality was an infinite one. And infinity is a misunderstood concept. People tend to think of infinity as that which is massive, that which is so huge that nothing is too big for it. But the truth is, mathematically, that's not even infinity. Because infinity is not just that which is so big that nothing is too big for it. True infinity is also that for which nothing is too small. So a galaxy is like a molecule, but in turn, just by the very same token, a molecule is a galaxy. That's infinity. So the Rebbe's view, we know nothing was too big for the Rebbe. No goal was too ambitious. after the Holocaust, the question of Jewish continuity was really seriously considered. Is there a future for Judaism, especially Torah-observant Judaism? And when everyone else was speaking about survival, the Rebbe was thinking in terms that at that time could only be described as sci-fi. Science fiction. There's no basis in reality, at least the way anyone else was looking at it at the time, that we are going to conquer the world for goodness, to bring the Shekhinah, to bring the divine presence back to the world, and to make this world perfect. A world that had seen Hitler and the Holocaust was going to be healed and become perfect and become godly. And for the Rebbe, that wasn't a job that was too big to accomplish. No, it can be done. And we can break it down into steps, and we can make a system, and we can send out shluchim. So nothing was too big. But by the same exact token, nothing was too small. There was a shliach from Melbourne, Australia, Rabbi Moshe Gutnick, Chaim Gutnick. Rabbi Chaim Gutnick came to the Rebbe and told him about his plans in Melbourne. And the Rebbe suggested to him that it was time to start teaching Taras HaMishpacha, the laws of family purity, mikveh. And Rabbi Gutnick felt that the community in Melbourne was not ready for that. You know, it can be a sensitive subject. Talking to people about their personal life, their intimate life. It's a difficult sell. And Rabbi Gutnick didn't want to flat out say that he didn't feel the community was ready for it, but he sort of didn't give the most enthusiastic response, and the Rebbe told him, no, you should do it, and it's going to be good. So he went back to Melbourne, and with his Rebbetzin, he started planning a course in Taras HaMishpacha. And the Rebbe said, it's going to be good. So they rented a hall, they got a venue, to make sure they had enough seating for all the people who were going to come, and they took out full-page ads in the newspaper to advertise. They're going to have a class in family purity. And they promoted the class for weeks. And the night of the class, one woman showed up. Now, that's worse than nobody showing up. Because, right, if nobody shows up, what do? You call it a day, you go home, and then maybe even you post online afterwards. It was a great crowd, wonderful evening, wish you could have been there. That's because no witnesses, no bystanders, right? But this is one woman showed up. So he apologized to her, and he said, I'm sorry, I don't know where the crowd is. And so she said, I'm ready to learn. So he taught this one woman, but it was a series. It wasn't a one-night thing. It was a series of classes. So he said, don't worry, next week it'll be better. And what did they do? They doubled down on the advertising. They made a bigger advertising campaign, so the next week would be a real crowd. And the second week of the class came, and one woman showed up, the same woman. Nobody else, just that one woman. And Rabbi Gutnick apologized. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know where the crowd is. She said, it's okay, I'm ready to learn. I'll learn with you. So they learned. And it went on like this for weeks. And they finished the whole course, whatever it was, however many weeks the course was supposed to be. And this one woman, she learned Taras HaMishpacha, she learned family purity, laws of mikveh, and that was it. Nobody else showed up. So being in Melbourne, which is very far away, it's not like Rabbi Gutnick went back and forth to New York all the time. It was more of a special trip. So the next time he was in Yechidus, he was in a private audience with the Rebbe, was a year later. And he had a year's worth of reports. We called it a duch, din v'cheshbon. He had a year of reports of what did they accomplish in Melbourne, all the different programs, classes, the outreach they were doing. And so he wrote up a nice report. The Rebbe loved reports. The Rebbe was always asking reports. Tell me what's going on. Always The Rebbe wanted updates. So Rabbi Gutnick wrote a whole nice report, what's going on in Melbourne. But he didn't write the debacle of the Taras HaMishpacha series of classes because it was embarrassing. One woman showed up. So it wasn't included in the duch. It wasn't in the write-up. And the Rebbe went through the write-up, and afterwards the Rebbe said, what's with the Taras HaMishpacha classes that we discussed the last time you were here? You know, that's the most uncomfortable question that Rabbi Gutnick could have been asked. So he said sheepishly that we did it. We advertised, we rented a hall, and it was a failure. The whole series of classes, just one woman showed up. And the Rebbe looked very serious and said to Rabbi Gutnick, Sag mir, tell me something. Wie viel Mames hat Moshe Rabbeinu gehabt? Mehr wie eine? How many mothers did Moshe Rabbeinu, did Moses have? More than one? And that was the whole answer. Rabbi Gutnick understood. It takes one mother to produce a Moshe Rabbeinu. One mother comes to a class, and you can help her. It's not just her. It's the ripple effect. The infinite ripple effect that doesn't stop with one person. How can it stop with one person? Because each one of us is infinite. Each one of us is a soul which is infinite and eternal. And by definition, anything that touches a soul becomes infinite and eternal. And it won't stay just in this room. It goes viral, like Reb Nachi mentioned. But this was going viral before the internet. Maybe the whole reason we have the internet is to have a mashal, to have a living metaphor, to start to understand infinity, the infinity that goes on in this world when one soul reaches out to another. There's a line of poetry that I've always found poignant from William Blake. He said, to see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. It's so Hasidic. I looked it up, by the way. I said, when did he write that? It was 1803. It was the year that the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, put out the first Siddur with Chassidus, with Chassidic commentary based on the teachings of Chassidus and according to the prayer rite of the Arizal. So that idea, I mean, that's pure Chassidus. To see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. That's Teres Baal Shem Tov. And I guess, trickle down effect, by the time the Baal Shem Tov started teaching it, then it was available in the world. And William Blake was able to put it into his beautiful English. But this is the concept. We don't understand, we have no clue, we do not fathom the ripple effect, the universal cosmic repercussions of everything that happens, and the power, therefore, that we have. But the Rebbe, having an infinite view, saw the significance was tuned into the significance and was able to plan accordingly. And that's why we all understand, those of us who have been influenced by the Rebbe, but that means really, at this point, all of us, whether we know it or not. In this generation, we understand that every good deed counts. Every mitzvah. Oh, what's the point? Somebody puts on tefillin on a street corner one time. Maybe he'll never do it again. Okay, but that moment exists for eternity. That moment is everything. And a mitzvah is infinite, just like God who gave the mitzvahs, and the moment is infinite. So Zalman told a story. Rabbi Wolowik, he's my friend though, I call him Zalman. He told a story. It's good to have friends. I don't have too many, so Baruch Hashem. I'm choosy with my friends. Zalman told a story, and I know that story. I've known it for years. It's an old story. We all know that story in Chabad. But I'm going to retell the story that he told because now it's a different story to me. It's a completely different story to me today than when I heard it years ago. And when I tell you the story, I want you to understand that the Rebbe's infinite view and the Rebbe's cosmic plan continues to unfold in our lives, and every moment we become more and more aware of its significance and how it touches each and every one of us. So here's a story, and you all know the story because you heard it 20 minutes ago. I'll tell it like this. I'll start with a 12-year-old kid in Curacao, which is an island in the Netherlands Antilles. Got kicked out of school. It was a religious school. That's all they had on the island. The Jewish boy refused to go along with the prayers. So he got kicked out. His father asked him, "What are you doing? Do you even go to school?" No, he goes and plays golf. And became a contentious issue. And they were getting letters, truancy letters. Your child cannot be wandering around. He has to go to school. And this Jewish boy didn't want to go to this non-Jewish school. So the father's at wit's end. He doesn't know what to do. He's desperate. And he has a dream, and he remembers his grandmother telling him, if you're ever in trouble, the Lubavitcher Rebbe can help you. Next day, he goes to shul. He has the custodian open up the Aron, the holy ark where the Torahs are kept, and he cries. And he says, my grandmother told me if I'm ever in trouble, the Lubavitcher Rebbe can help me. Well, I'm in trouble right now because my son won't go to school because he's Jewish. He won't go to the non-Jewish school, and the whole island is upset at me. Meanwhile, back in Brooklyn, people know where Brooklyn is. Rabbi Moshe Kotlarsky gets a call in the middle of the night. Like Rabbi Zalman said, that's Rabbi Zalman Shver, as he mentioned, his father-in-law. Rabbi Chadakov, the chief secretary, asks Rabbi Kotlarsky, Shengavasha Negavasa, did you wash your hands? Which means the Rebbe's on the line. And he's told, go to Curacao. And that was it. That was the entire instruction. Go to Curacao. The Rebbe's telling, go to Curacao. So he goes. And he asked the cab driver, take me to the synagogue. He didn't even know where he's going. He didn't know who he's supposed to meet with. He just knows that Rebbe told him to go. So he gets there and he tells the cab driver, take me to the synagogue. Now I'll tell you a little Hashgacha Pratis. The oldest synagogue in the Western Hemisphere is in Curacao. It's called the Mikveh Yisrael Emmanuel Synagogue. And it was founded by Sephardic Jews from the Netherlands in the 1600s. It's historical. It's a historical shul. If you get into any cab in Curacao and say, take me to the synagogue, that's where they would take you, because it's a historical landmark. This was the one cab driver in Curacao who never heard of it. And he took Rabbi Kotlarski to some rinky-dink little shul. That was the shul where this father of this truant boy was standing before the open ark and pouring out his heart and crying and saying the only thing he knew to say, because he remembered in a dream that his grandmother, his departed grandmother, had told him, when you're in trouble, ask the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He comes out of shul, and Rabbi Kotlarski is there. I'm here from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I was sent from Brooklyn, from Crown Heights. The Rebbe sent me. Boom, that's it. Now he knows why he's there. For this one Jew, for this one family. And it's very moving. It's very moving that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, with everything on his plate, running a global organization, is sending someone to go help out one family. It's very moving. Zalman mentioned the letter. I actually printed the letter. I just want to read part of it. So this is the thank you letter that the father writes to the Rebbe through Rabbi Kotlarski. Thank you for basically making time for a small Jew from Curacao. So the Rebbe writes back in English. It's an English letter. Mr. Chaim Yosef Grossman, P.O. Box 2073, Breederstraat 74, Curacao, NA, which I think is not non-applicable. I think it's Netherlands Antilles. You don't see that abbreviation too often. Greeting and blessing. I was pleased to receive your regards through our esteemed mutual friends. I must, however, take exception to you referring to yourself as, quote, a small Jew from Curacao. There is surely no need to emphasize to you at length that every Jew, man or woman, has a nefesh elokis, that means a godly soul, which is a, quote, part of godliness above, as explained in the Tanya, beginning of chapter 2. Thus, there is no such thing as a small Jew, and a Jew must never underestimate his or her tremendous, underline the word tremendous, potential. I read that letter probably 100 times. I once wrote a sermon about it. I've heard the story for years. It's a known story. But it hits differently tonight. Because 2 nights ago, we celebrated Baruch Hashem, the Vort L'chaim of my son Yisro in Crown Heights, who was engaged to Malki Grossman, the granddaughter of the recipient of this letter, the daughter of the truant boy who wouldn't attend the non-Jewish school. And now I find out a story that I've known for years was really about me. That the Rebbe, in his infinite view, waking up Rabbi Kotlarski in the middle of the night, was thinking way, way beyond something that happened in 1983. That's when it happened, by the way. And I'm sure way beyond whatever we know about in 2023, because the story's just getting started, isn't it? You ask, what's our connection to the Rebbe on his 29th yortzeit? 29 years is a long time. There are people who were born, grew up, got married, started families of their own, all in the past 29 years, all after the Rebbe's passing. So how fresh, how up-to-date can our relationship be? So I'm telling you, the Rebbe just did a miracle for me that I just found out about 2 nights ago. But I don't think I'm special. I believe the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a tzaddik nister, a hidden tzaddik. You're going to say, how is the Lubavitcher Rebbe a hidden tzaddik? He's world famous. Chabad houses all over the world. Because as much as we think we know, it's not the tip of the iceberg. It's not even the tip of the iceberg. I knew the story of No Small Jew for years. And I didn't know it was about me and my family and my son. More and more is revealed all the time. Everyone in this room, I promise you, and I would bet anything on it, is the recipient of miracles of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whether you know about it or you don't know about it yet. For our part, because the Rebbe didn't like inspiration, the Rebbe didn't just like getting people all worked up and then shekayach, l'chaim, and let's move on. No. Let me talk practical. Hamaisa hua ikar, like the Rebbe said all the time. I want to talk practical. The Rebbe has been pulling strings and continues to pull strings to make stuff happen in our families, in our lives, on a massive scale and also on an intimately personal scale. If you are the recipient of such loving care, then please get up and show the world your infinity. Whatever it is you think is too big for you to accomplish, go out and do double that to start with. Because there's no small Jew. You are infinite. You are eternal. And the Rebbe, with his infinite view, saw the eternality and the infinity within you and planned accordingly, whether you know about it yet or not yet. Whatever I think that I owe the Rebbe, whatever I thought, I found out a couple days ago it's a whole lot more. We're not here to be inspired. Inspiration, as far as I'm concerned, is a dirty word in Chabad. Chabad, the Alter Rebbe started Chabad, Chochma Bina Das. You know what that means? That means the intellect. We're not here to get all emotionally enthralled and excited and dance around and call it an evening. Chabad means moichin, it means the mind, it means a paradigm shift. It means seeing the world in a new light and acting accordingly. When you know something, you can never unknow it. When you find out that there's a Rebbe, a Rosh B'nai Yisrael, Resh Beis Yud, literally a head of the Jewish people, who sees the big picture, who sees the infinite view, and is taking care of everything from the most massive to the tiniest, most nitty-gritty detail. When you know that, you can never unknow it. And then you have to live accordingly. Go out and do something. Reach out to another Jew. Whatever it is that you have in your Jewish home, whatever it is that your family possesses Jewishly, share it, give it away. This is another secret of the Rebbe, that ultimately the only Yiddishkeit that any of us truly have is whatever Yiddishkeit we are currently actively giving away to others. And very, very soon, we're going to see how all of our work and all of the things we've been doing has had infinite significance. It's all going to be revealed to us. The whole big picture, like Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. We're going to see the big picture. We're going to see what the Rebbe saw all along. When Mashiach comes, and we'll finally see reality as it is. And we'll see the magnitude of our good deeds. And we'll see the magnitude of each and every one of us. And we'll see the Rebbe again. L'chaim.
Tzama lecho nafshi Kama lecho v'sori B'yeretz tzio v'yoyech b'limo Durin Marcus Totti Schneier Marcuni Koblein Schneefrodein Dol Caro Bisvarco Hey Durin Marcus Totti Schneier Marcuni Koblein Schneefrodein Dol Caro Bisvarco Hey Zomma Nafshi Koma Lcho Besori Hey Zomma Lcho Nafshi Koma Lcho Besori Hey Durin Marcus Totti Schneier Marcuni Koblein Schneefrodein Dol Caro Bisvarco Hey Durin Marcus Totti Schneier Marcuni Zomma Lcho Nafshi Koma Lcho Besori Hey Zomma Lcho Nafshi Koma Lcho Besori
Dogma. What's that?
Every cause loses people, so you gotta do one more nigga or something. I think we should do it with another message.
Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Rabbi Taub had mentioned that this is the unveiling of my kapata. I have been wearing it for a couple of years. I think I said this last year, but I think it's worth chazara. It started out, I was davening, maybe at that time a small shul, Kahal Mavakshi Hashem, on Lawrence Avenue, and it was a Sudas Mashiach. I remember sitting there with my brothers, Yochanan, Nissen, and something that Rabbi Zakutinsky said, something about the Baal Shem Tov, something about a ship. I can't put my finger on it exactly. I remember going home that night, and I said, I think it's time. 7 generations, my family, the Gordon family, we're the Levush. My great-grandfather being Rabbi Gordon, buried by the oil. He had a full, nice beard. Once again, I'm being guilted into the beard. Just saying. Next year. I had it this morning. I just shaved. I forgot I was coming here. It was a mistake, honest mistake. Anyways, so that's where it began. And that's where we're sitting right now. The rabbi I'm about to introduce is lighting souls on fire here in the 5 towns all over the world. It is my honor, and I am extremely humbled to introduce Rav Yussie Zakutinsky.
Okay, shkoyach. All right, so I'll tell you the truth. You have to start off with something that's certainly truthful. And that is, it's a little bit intimidating. I'm a little bit intimidated, and I'll tell you why. Yes, chashav rabbanim for sure. A tzibur that's a chashav tzibur, and I can't really see anyone, I'll be honest with you, but I know that there's a chashav tzibur here. But the real reason why I feel intimidated is because, you hear stories about the Rebbe, how the Rebbe, in 770 had eyes that saw everything that was going on. That's what it is. Everything that was going on. And in Chassidus we're taught that after the histalkus, after a person passes away, especially at tzaddik, so the neshama is untethered, the neshama is not held back anymore by the boundaries, by the limitations of the body. And so whatever koyach hariyah, whatever ability to see that the Rebbe had in his physical lifetime is kifli kiflayim. It's infinitely more intense. And so if the Rebbe, when he was alive, saw everything, alachas kama v'kama, after every single year, moving away from the histalkus, from the separation, from the unlimiting effect of that day of Gimel Tammuz, so all the more so the Rebbe is definitely having eyes on not just every single one of us, but specifically the mamadim, the gatherings that are l'chvoida, that are for his honor, to be makasher ourselves to the tzaddik. So that's it's one thing to have your parents in the crowd or your in-laws or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But if the Rebbe himself is here, so it's even more intimidating. But the avoid is the tachlis of all this is not just like Rabbi Taub mentioned, not stam for hisayrus or inspiration. It's hiskashras. Trying to be makasher ourselves to the tzaddik, to makasher ourselves to who we're supposed to be, makasher ourselves to each other. So that's the avoida. So really what I want to do now, just for the next few minutes a little bit, is really to just piggyback off of what Rav Shais mentioned. To malbish it in a different way, but it's the same basic idea. Everything is b'shad tov matzlachas. Everything has a zman. Everything is bi'ita. Everything in its right time. If the yortzeit of the Rebbe, if the histalkus of the Rebbe took place in the month of Tammuz, and not just in the month of Tammuz, but Gimel Tammuz. Gimel 3 is always a number of chazakah. The first day of a month is like sort of the month. Second day we're getting somewhere. The third day is ready. Oh, that's the month. So Gimel Tammuz, it means that it must be b'derech avoda. It must be the Rebbe was telling us something about our own personal avodah that has to be connected both to the Rebbe and to the month of Tammuz. So let's investigate for the next few minutes just a little bit of what the inyan of the month of Tammuz is. Certainly when we think of Tammuz, so if we think about it in Avodas Hashem, it brings to mind obviously the months of the summer, which is revolving around Galus and Churban Beis Hamikdash. It's well known, even though the month of Av we think of as much more intense in terms of the focus on Avelis in the morning of over the Beis Hamikdash, but the truth is, to a certain degree, Tammuz is more intense because by the month of Av, at least by the 15th of Av, by Tu B'Av, it's already done and there's comfort. But all of the month of Tammuz is completely Galistic. And so let's investigate what's the inyan of the month of Tammuz. There's a principle that we have from the Sefer Yetzirah. It's a book of creation. It's one of the oldest Kabbalah Svarim we have. It goes back to Avraham Avinu. So there's a principle in the Sefer Yetzirah that every single month is connected to a number of things. Every month is connected to a letter of the Aleph Beis. And every month is also connected to a particular faculty, a particular experience of the human being. And so it says in Sefer Yetzirah like this, Himlech ois ches b'Tammuz, u're'iyah b'nefesh. It says in Sefer Yetzirah, the month of Tammuz is connected with the letter ches, in the Aleph Beis, and the faculty, the ability of sight, of seeing. The letter ches is crowned in the month of Tammuz, and so is the power of re'iyah, the ability to see in the soul, in the person. So Tammuz is connected to the month of the letter ches and the concept of seeing, the ability to see. Now, if you think about it, this is a strange thing. There's a principle in the Svar Makdoshim, Rav Tzaddik talks about this a lot, that if you want to identify the essence of something, you always have to look at its first appearance in Chumash. So we have two things to identify the month of Tammuz with, that's the letter ches, and seeing. But what's amazing is that where's the first place that the letter ches appears in Chumash? That's right, you don't have to go too far. It says in Pasuk, Hashem created the world, and before at the beginning of creation, it describes the world as v'choshech al pnei sahaim. There was darkness on the face of the depths. That's the first appearance of the letter ches in the word choshech, darkness. And this is ironic because seeing requires light. Seeing is the opposite of darkness. In fact, the first place that seeing is mentioned in Chumash is v'yar lakim es ha'or ki tov, that Hashem saw the light, that it was good. So these two things, the letter ches, whose origin is in the word darkness, and the concept of re'i, of seeing, whose origin is in light, seems to be a little bit paradoxical. So what does this mean over here, that the month of Tammuz is a month that's connected with the letter ches and the ability to see? There's a fantastic pasuk. The pasuk says, Ha'am ha'olchem b'choshech ro or gadol. The people that were walking in darkness saw a great light. That's the month of Tammuz. So what's the site of that? What's the mystery of that? What is this telling us about our avodas Hashem? All right, so one of the most, a person cannot constrict the hashpah of the Rebbe over the world in any particular way. But without a question, one of the big inyanim, certainly, that the Rebbe brought to the Jewish world, b'chlal, was a Mashiach-dika consciousness. That Geula should be something that people should talk about, something should be living with, that it should be something that is not just how you end the shmuz with, b'meher v'yimeinu amen, you know what I mean? It should be something that we live with. So let's share for a few minutes something about the inyan of Geula. There's an amazing pasuk in Sefer Yeshai. It says in pasuk like this, regarding, it's talking about the light of Mashiach, the Orish Mashiach, which is Tarsa Baal Shem Tov. So it says in pasuk, Oz yivaker k'shachar oirech, v'arukoscha mehera titzmach. In English it says that the light of Mashiach is described, the coming of Mashiach is described, Oz yivaker k'shachar oirech, like it's going to rise like the rising sun, like in the morning. And your healing will come quickly. Oz yivaker k'shachar oirech, that the light of Mashiach is described, is compared to the rising sun. V'arukoscha, and your healing, mehera titzmach, will come quickly. So Chazal point out two things from that pasuk. Number one, the fact that Mashiach is described similar, the coming of Mashiach is described similarly to a rising sun. Chazal say in the language, kima kima, slowly, slowly. It's a bislach, piece by piece. The sun doesn't just come like that. It slowly rises, it slowly rises. So too Geula is described in such a way, which is slow, methodical. Yitzat Sheni, what's a pella is the end of that pasuk. Oz yivaker k'shachar oirech, the sun, the Mashiach is described like a sun that rises slowly. V'arukoscha, and your healing, mehera titzmach, will come quickly. And we have other places in Chazal that focus on the end of that pasuk and show the opposite point. That Gula is not something that happens slowly. It's mamish pislayim yavei yadain. It's immediate, out of nowhere. Bizrizas, b'chipazin. So it's one thing to have conflicting psukim in Tanakh or conflicting traditions in Chazal. Okay, you could call it machlekes or whatever, but this is one pasuk. So what does this mean? All right, so let me share with you an idea. The guys from the shul, they might have heard this idea before. I've quoted this from the Ishbitzer. It's from Yankel Ishbitz. It's a Pelagic idea, but it's a game changer in Avodas Hashem B'chlal. Really, it's a klal that goes back to the Kisveri, but again, to package it, al derech haChasidus. Yankel Ishbitzer said the following thing. He said, and he was a big tzaddik, he could testify to this. Yankel Ishbitzer said that it's known that if the tzaddikim wanted, they could have brought Gula a long time ago. Could have happened a long time ago. But there was a collective decision by the tzaddikim, subconsciously, consciously, not to bring it like that. Why? So Yaakov Lishbitzer says an amazing thing. He says like this. On the one hand, if the tzaddikim brought Geula, or Klal Yisrael brought Geula, then that will result in a redemption that would fit our hasagis. It would fit our understanding, our way of thinking. The Rabbanu Shloim that we would be introduced to through a Geula that we brought, that would be a Rabbanu Shloim that fits within certain packages, certain frameworks of understanding. And the Yaakov Lishbitzer said that the Jewish people have decided a long time ago, we don't want such a redemption. We don't want that moment when the Rebbeinu Shem says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem, and he reintroduces himself in a revealed way. We don't want that God or that side of the Rebbeinu Shem, so to speak, to be something that is limited. What we want is a Geula that's mitzidai, a redemption that's coming with the full revelation, as much as the Rebbeinu Shem himself chooses to do, to reveal himself from his side of things, the way he wants to, which is going to be bigger and deeper and infinite than anything that we could have accomplished on our own. Therefore, said Rabbi Yankel Lishbitzer, this is why the Jewish people have collectively, we didn't force it. But then Rabbi Yankel Lishbitzer says even more. He says, but here's the thing. But the Rebbeinu Shem doesn't like this so much, because although it's nice for us to be introduced to a God that's way bigger than anything we could possibly imagine, but the Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to feel connected to the Geula. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to feel comfortable with redemption. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to enter into that world that's called Geula and have a sense of nostalgia about it. That it should be something familiar, that it should be something not just familiar, but something that we can say is ours. And so we have this strange paradox, this strange tug of war. On the one hand, what we want is a redemption that's in full, that's limitless. The world that we want to be introduced to with the coming of Mashiach is a world that reveals the Rebbeinu Shalom on his terms, without being constricted from our terms. Yet mitzad sheni, on the other hand, that world that we want to be introduced to has to be a world that is familiar to us, a world that we're comfortable with, and a world that we can say we made. Because only a redemption, only a world that we can say was b'ma'aseh yadeinu, was with our own handiwork, was with our own effort, only that is a geula that we can feel a hiskashrus with. And since ultimately the whole tachlis of redemption is to deepen, is to experience that hiskashrus with the Rebbeinu Shalom, all attachment comes from a feeling of devotion, a feeling of putting yourself in that, of not just sitting back and receiving, of being proactive in the process. So said Rabbi Yankel Lishbitzer, the Rebbeinu Shalom did an amazing thing, which is that the building blocks of that future life, that future world that's called the world of Mashiach, the light of Mashiach, the Rebbeinu Shalom planted the seeds of that universe. The Rebbeinu Shalom wove that light into the world that we experience now. And by us going through the world of Galus, the world of exile, which is a world that we're comfortable with, the world that we're familiar with, Avodas Hashem, the Torah of Galus, the Torah that fits within the framework of our lives, the system that we can feel comfortable with. Within that itself, not only are we making this world better, not only are we making this world which is anyway hospitable to us, and this world which is anyway within the framework of our understanding, not only are we improving in this, but we ourselves are proactively involved in building a world that's bigger than us. And this is the secret of Geula. This is why Mashiach is on the one hand being described as something which happens slow, and also something that happens quickly. In the writings of the Maharal, we find that things that happen slowly are always indicative of derech hateva, of things which are working within nature, things which are working within the construct of reality that we can process, that we can fully comprehend. The reason time moves slowly, everything moves at a certain consistent pace. That's derech hateva, that's called nature. And the Oyer shel Mashiach, the light of Mashiach, is a light that was embedded, that is embedded, and is being developed in a world that we are comfortable with, in the world of Galus itself, a world that we can fully grasp. But yet at the same time, what emerges out of that avodah, after we put in the effort of cultivating those seeds that have been planted in that soil called nature, what emerges out of that is pisayim yavei adain, is something that's quick, something that's in haste. And the Maharal explains very often that zerizos, things that happen quickly, are always a sign of it happening beyond our abilities. We got out of Mitzrayim, for example, quickly. Why? Because it wasn't something that we deserved. It was coming from above. Things that come from above are by their very nature quick. Geula is both described as slow and quick. Let's understand, this is the secret of the letter Ches. Why? You know, there's different ways to write the letter Ches. According to the Arizal, on the Nusach of the Ari, the letter Ches is made of two letters, a Vav and a Zayin, with a little bridge connecting them on top. If you can imagine, that's what a Ches is. What's amazing is that the letter Vav is 6, Zayin is 7. Those two numbers, 6 and 7, again in the writings of the Maharal, these are very Olam Hazeh numbers. They're very earthly numbers. They're very grounded. They're very methodical, very slow, procedural. 6 days of the week, even Shabbos, it's still part of that maracha. It's part of that construct that's called nature. But in the writings of the Maharal, there's one number which always means that which is beyond our grasp, that which is infinite, that which is beyond our ability to even conceptualize. That's always the number 8. The eight candles of Hanukkah and so on. 8 always means L'mal Derech HaTeva. You see the paradox of the letter Ches, according to the Arizal, is that the letter Ches, which is the number 8, is itself built from a Vav and a Zayin. It's built from a Vav and a Zayin. Which means, where does a person find Oyer shel Mashiach? Where does a person look in order to find that which is infinite, like Rabbi Taub was mentioning? The answer is in everything that's in front of you. In everything that's simple, everything that's basic, everything that's practical, everything that's down to earth, that's where you find it. You know, the Gemara says in Menachos regarding that little bridge on top of the letter Ches that, again, according to the way of the Arizal, it points up a little bit. And the Gemara says in Menachos, the reason for that is because the letter Ches is the beginning of the word Chai, to be alive. And that little bridge on top is hinting to us that the Rebbeinu Shalom is Chai, Berumah Shel Olam, that God is alive at the pinnacle of the world. That term, that the Rebbeinu Shalom lives at the height of the world, which is hinted to by that pointing upward bridge in the letter Ches. It's a funny thing, because we have other places in Chazal that the Rebbeinu Shalom, that God is described as being above the world. The whole world is something He created, so clearly He's above it. So to say that the Rebbeinu Shalom is Berumai Shel Olam, that He exists in the highest place of the world, is itself a paradox. If Hashem is Beruma, if you want to truly describe His exaltedness, then that means He's above the world. But yet, He's being described as existing Berumai, exalted, transcendent, Shel Olam, within the world. That exactly is the secret of the letter Ches. This is why, if you think about it, the letter Ches, which the Gemara Menachos just told us, is connected with the word Chai. And Hashem is Chai Beruma Shel Olam. So Chai is 18, as we know. What's the 18th word in Chumash? So the 18th word in Chumash is also in the beginning of creation, where it describes, again, there's darkness and water and so on. V'ruach Elokim ar chefes al pnei hamayim, that the Spirit of Hashem was hovering, touching and not touching. Mar chefes is hovering over the waters. The word mar chefes is the 18th word in Chumash. The word mar chefes that Rizal taught is a combination of two words, meis, rapach. Meis rapach means, Reish Peches means, it's a gematria 288. For those that, that are involved in Chassidus, we know that 288 that's the number of all the divine sparks that are scattered amongst the world. So you have a world that's dead. That's mace. You have a world that's dead. But unbelievably, paradoxically, scattered amongst those ruins of this world are 288 sparks of divine light. And how do we engage in those divine light, those sparks? How do we raise them up? How do we reunite them with their source? How do we discover them? By doing everything we know we do. By davening 3 times a day, by keeping halacha properly, by saying a good word, everything that we're familiar with. Nothing out of the ordinary, everything that we know. Tefillin, mezuzah, kashrus, Shabbos, taras mishpacha, all the things that we're familiar with. That's how we raise up these divine sparks. But what is built from those divine sparks? Ironically, dafka, specifically from those actions that we're most comfortable with and most accustomed to, that's exactly, those are the activities that we do to build Ruchei Shel Mashiach, the spirit of Mashiach, the world of Geula. V'ruach Elokim merachefes al pnei hamayim, the Chazal say that the spirit of Hashem that's hovering over the waters is Ruchei Shel Mashiach, that's the spirit of Mashiach. How do you discover Ruchei Shel Mashiach? Where is Ruchei Shel Mashiach? It's merachefes. It's exactly in that place of Meis Rapach. Meis Rapach, the dead world that still has within it the seeds of redemption itself, the infinite that's contained in the finite, that itself is the secret of Chai. That's the secret of the letter Ches. So Tammuz is a month that's all gullus. But there's no such thing as all gullus. Whenever a month comes that's gullistic, in that month, the Rebbeinu Shalom has to be pointing an arrow to where Geula is. So where does he point? Into Tammuz. The month of Tammuz is the letter Ches. Himlich ois ches b'Tammuz v're'iyah b'nefesh. When it says, when it describes in Chumash the darkness versus the light, that darkness that's described in the beginning of Chumash is not the darkness, of just there's no light. The darkness over there is a description of a reality that's beyond your ability to comprehend. Light means, seeing means a world that you can process, a world that you can make sense of, a world that doesn't conjure up things of the imagination. Darkness means that which is beyond your conception. The secret of Tammuz is to be able to comprehend and to grasp and to feel connected to that which you can't. To realize that the entire light of redemption, which is a universe which is beyond our conception, a God that's bigger than us, is at the same time familiar to us and at the same time nostalgic to us. The secret of Tammuz is the secret of Ha'am Ha'olchem B'choshech Ro'ar Gadol, is a people that go in darkness and are able to see it. And this is what we're waiting for with Geula. We're waiting for Mashiach is not something new. I shouldn't say that. It is new, but altogether old at the same time. The ability to feel connected to something which is so beyond us. To be able to hold on to, when a mother's baking a cake or something, and the mother wants the little kid to be involved, so all the little kid does is hold on to the bowl as she pours the dough or pours the flour. And the mother says to the kid, you baked a cake. And the kid feels that they baked a cake. Now we know that it's really a joke. But that's what Geula is. But real, not as a joke. The emes. We mamash baked the cake, even though we couldn't have. So I was thinking about this. Lubavitcher Rebbe, someone that was so deeply attached to Irish Mashiach, to this Indian of Geula, that new world, that otherworldly dimension that's called redemption. You would think someone like that would be so impractical, would be so beyond the minor details of life. But there was no one that was more practical. There was no one that was more down to earth. There was no one that was more relatable. Despite the fact that even when he spoke English, it was with a Russian accent, and still you had Americans that had no, and they felt connected to him, they felt comfortable to him. The relatability of someone that was so completely unrelatable, that itself is the secret of Tammuz. That's the secret of Gula. That's Arish Mashiach. That's what we're all trying to do. Rav Nachman in one of his Torahs in the Likutei Moharan, he talks about the tzaddik ha'emes, the tzaddik amiti, the true tzaddik. And he says the true tzaddik is able to do two things at the same time. He's able to take Jews that feel that they know who the Rebbeinu Shalom is and show them how they don't know anything. And Jews that feel they don't know who the Rebbeinu Shalom is, to show them how they know exactly who the Rebbeinu Shalom is. That's a tzaddik ha'emes. To unite Dari Mal in the language of Rabbi Nachman, to unite those that live above with those that live below, all at the same time, that's a tzaddik. That's a tzaddik. That's Gula. And that's what we're trying to connect to in our own lives. To be able to go through life and to see the people that we're familiar with anyway, the people that we're accustomed to, everything that is familiar to us, a Yiddishkeit that fits within our lifestyle. And Afal Pikein, and despite all of that familiar and relatability, but to be completely in awe of it at the same time. That every time we put on tefillin, might not have the smell of the first time, when it's like new leather. Although I have a taiva sometimes, always like to buy new straps, just to have that smell again, But to always be in awe of it. To imagine is always as if it's the first time you're doing a mitzvah, but at the same time, you know how to do it perfectly. That's Mashiach, that's Gula. So I guess I'll end off with a ma'aseh if it's okay. So, it's one of the big Chassidish Rebbes, one of the big tzaddikim, that he was deeply, deeply connected to Tzipiyah Yeshua, of longing for Mashiach, of wanting Gula. That was Yisnach Moshe. Yisnach Moshe was very much connected to Arish Mashiach. And so Yisnach Moshe, he was a chassid of the Chayz of Lublin. But he wasn't born into Chassidus, he wasn't born as a chassid. He was born, not a misnagid per se, but not a chassid. And so as he grew older, and he became more and more involved with Pnimius HaTorah, so he found himself becoming more and more drawn to Torah Baal Shem, to the light of Mashiach, to the light of Chassidus. But Yisnach Moshe said, though, that he told this over later, he said that there was always something holding him back from really, going all in. Of buying a kapata and so on. There was something holding him back. What was holding him back? What was holding him was like this. He said that he was someone that always was so sensitive to Golus and to the tsar of the Shechina Hakdosha, the pain of the divine presence in Golus, and what's missing without Mashiach. And he sees that one of the Ikra Avodas of the Baal Shem and his students is Simcha. And so he said like this, I understand Simcha is important, of course, but Lamaisa, Mashiach isn't here yet. So how can you be besimcha? So this is what was holding him back. So at some point he decided, he's going to raise the question. He's going to go to the Chayz of Lublin. He's going to ask the Chayz himself. So he makes the trip to the Chayz. By the Chayz, the seer of Lublin, you didn't have to ask the question. He knew exactly what you were going to ask. So Yisnach Moshe comes into the room, and the Chayz of Lublin turns to me, he says, young man, I'm going to tell you a ma'aseh. He says, let me tell you a story. He says, what's the story? He says, Bekitzer, it's a longer story, I'll make it short. There was once a king, like all good Jewish stories begin, there was once a king. And this king, Lamaisa, he grew up in royalty. So this is a person who was obviously pampered from the time that he was very little, always surrounded by, yes men and people that would always do whatever he wanted. He never really experienced anything really difficult. He had to go to school, he had to obviously be taught and be educated, but he was the prince, and then he becomes the king. So he said one day this king wanted to go on a trip, and in those days, what royalty and the upper class, what they used to do very often is go on hunting trips. So this king went on a hunting trip, but it is a hunting trip. He had the most expensive guns, the most fancy hunting clothing, and he's surrounded by his entourage. So how much really of the woods is he experiencing? Not so much. He's going like that, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Chayz of Lublin said the heavens closed up. Lightning, thunder, torrential downpour. Trees were being hit by lightning all around them. Everyone is just, freaking out. and everyone's going crazy. And all the soldiers and entourage surrounding the king all run away in fear of what's going on. And Nebuch, the king, is left by himself. But what's amazing is the king, he never was in the woods really by himself, especially in such a terrifying situation. So panic takes him. He begins to run. But in the woods like that, you run 5 minutes, you're already completely lost, and you can't find your way back. So not only 5 minutes, and he's running, and an hour passes, 2 hours pass. Eventually, he finds himself mamish, lost in the middle of the wilderness. And he has to spend the night like this, but he's soaking wet. It's getting freezing cold. He's becoming, it's becoming dangerous. So, meanwhile, the soldiers, there's nothing they can do. So they know their way back. They find their way back, but the king is Nebuch. He's lost out there. So the king has to schlep from, trying to find his way until finally he sees, a light from a hut or something in a distance, and he goes to the hut and he knocks on the door, and some Jew or whatever, some peasant opens the door, and he says, "What is it?" He says, "I'm the king." "Yeah, sure, you're the king. I'm sure. The king just came 10 minutes ago also. Yeah, you're the king." Closes the door. He goes a little bit more. Then he knocks on another door. "Who are you?" "The king." "Baba Meisim." Closes the door. Finally, he hits a door where a Jew opens the door. He says, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm the king." And he's like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I'm the king." So the guy takes off his glasses, and he looks at him. He says, "Yankel." That was the king's name, let's say, Yankel. He said, "Don't you remember me?" "Well, what?" Listen, I'm a little peasant now, but I also went to school. We were in the same class together. Don't you remember? So the king looks at him. It's been a long time. The king says, "Oh, Moshe, I remember you." So he comes in. Obviously, he gives him warm clothing, some porridge to eat. And the whole night, they're just reminiscing, talking about the good old days in class, talking about how they put thumbtacks under the teacher's chair, whatever, all the stuff that kids always do. And at some point throughout the night, their mom is having a good time, and someone says a joke, and their mom is rolling and laughing. And it comes time for the morning. And all of a sudden, after the whole night of schmoozing and Farbrengen together, so the peasant looks at the king and begins to cry. This is the Chais says. And so the king says to the peasant, "Moshe, why are you crying?" He said, "Because I got carried away the whole night. We're just enjoying ourselves. And now the sun is coming up, and I'm beginning to realize who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the king. It's so not right to talk to the king like that." So the king turned to the peasant. He said, "I'll tell you the truth. It's probably not so right to talk to me like that. But to be honest with you, I haven't had a more enjoyable night in a very long time. Because if I was in the palace, there would be no way for you to come to me. I mean, if you tried, everyone would push you away. But because I got lost in the woods, and the only person who would take me in was you, so I could actually take I could take off the crown off my head, so to speak, and just be myself and just talk to a Jew that we grew up together." And so the king said to the peasant, "Listen, the day has come now already. I have to get back to the palace. You'll direct me the right way. But you should know, whenever you want to come, I'll tell the message to all the Gabayim and so on. You come in, we're going to Farbrengen whenever you want." The Chais said that's the story of Yidden in Galus. It's not true. The Rebbeinu Shalom is lost in the forest. The Shekhinah is lost, and it's a tragic thing. And we have to mourn all about it. We have to mourn all the time, especially these months. But said the Chais, "B'chsidim are b'simcha." Why? In the tragedy, in the mourning. And it's not easy to explain. But the Chais said, by the Chassidim, we understand that there is a certain tanug, there is a certain enjoyment the Rebbeinu Shalom has, that he's not in his palace. So he's wandering the wilderness. But we're the only ones that take him in. But you know what? The irony is that when we take the king in, we recognize each other. The neshama knows the Rebbeinu Shalom knows the neshama. We might not have been able to make it to the Kodesh HaKodshim. But if the Rebbeinu Shalom is not in the Kodesh HaKodshim, so to speak, there is a simcha in that. And to a certain degree, the Rebbeinu Shalom is b'simcha. And that's why Chassidim are b'simcha. So it means that's where Gula comes from. In the Chayshech. HaMalachim b'Chayshech Ro'er HaGadol. Should we zech to Mekasher ourselves to the Tzaddik HaEmes, to Mekasher ourselves to each other, to ourselves, to the Chelik L'Kamim Al-Mamish that's within us, and be able to take all the materials that are familiar to us, all the experiences of this world, which is comfortable and within our jurisdiction, within our within our sphere of influence. And not only to influence our sphere of influence, but to realize that what we're influencing in our spheres of influence is bichlal beyond anything we could possibly imagine. And we ourselves are building a world that is beyond our ability to even begin to process. Should be zeicha to fulfill, that it should be fulfilled within us, the bracha that the tzaddikim and Chazal used to give to each other, Olamcha tir b'chayecha. You should see the world that you're building in your own lifetime. Each and every one of us, we should be zeicha to be introduced to that world that we are building, Arish Mashiach. We should be zeicha to experience that. B'poel ma'amish, b'einayim gluyim, b'bias kol tzedek, Maher v'meinu, amen.
All right. We want to thank Rabbi Yussie Zakutinsky, Rabbi Nachi Gordon. Yeah, no, it's not over. Eli's going to continue to sing, but we want to remind you that cars are leaving for the oil, and we'll be continuing the Farbrengen at the oil, and we have a special opportunity to move this holy convocation just a few blocks away, and there we will continue. Rabbi Eli, back to you.
Ay, Shimcha Might have right now we're here in the tent.